Ironically, in the evil capitalist society, the sewer cleaner freely chooses to take on his job.
Every single person that you find down amidst the fucking fatbergs and the raw sewage, that's somebody who dreamed of doing that all their life.
In the socialist paradise, coercion is almost always required.
Okay, so in a socialist paradise, there's a boss with a clipboard looking over your shoulder. Unlike capitalism, where we don't have any bosses. Game, and I'm going to rip the piss. We're going to look at some theory. We're going to look at a true work of theoretical... I mean, I hesitate to even elevate it to the level of mediocrity. It will be interesting. You see... Come on, where the fuck are you, chat? I've got so many windows open. As you know, we anarchists have a fair few strops with the Marxists and the Leninists. Some of those things are down to legitimate disagreements on issues that actually matter. And on the other hand, there's a lot of conflict that comes from one tendency, misunderstanding the other's ideology and sources of analysis and inspiration. Where we have legit disagreements about things that are relevant to what we're all trying to do now, I think it's important to have them out, or to let new understandings emerge from shared struggle. I'm a bit of a Dharmakit Jihadist in that regard. But where we're at odds over misunderstandings, I think we should overcome them in the hopes of increasing our ability to come together where we find ourselves otherwise on the same side. And so... let's have a look at a theoretical work that I think we can all agree on, if not with. Azure Scapegoat. No, I don't think I do know that one. Okay. Got our... volume up to where it belongs. Let me know.
Why does anyone still care about Marxism? Karl Marx has been dead for well over a century.
Yeah, I mean, why does anyone care about things that, like, why does anyone care about relativity? I mean, that fucking Einstein, he's been dead since the 50s? Or, like, evolution? I mean, Darwin died? What's this idea that people who died might have ideas worth studying?
Everywhere Marxism has been tried, it has left death and destruction in its wake.
Which you cannot say of capitalism. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, yeah, but Jesus you can eat. I mean, so you gotta care about him. I mean, he's a healthy snack and a drink. Jesus is carbs and alcohol. Okay.
In fact, nothing in the last 1,000 years comes close to the amount of tyranny, terror, and mass murder brought about by Marxist regimes.
Well, I mean, the amount of tyranny, terror, and mass murder brought about by the United States since about 1945 comes pretty fucking close. In fact, it actually kind of exceeds it.
Yet Marxism lives. It may present itself today as postmodernism, multiculturalism, feminism, environmentalism, or critical race theory.
No. Like, literally no. Okay, yeah, you wanna, if you wanna just see some people, like, choke laughing, just go to a Marxist conference and tell them that they're all just a bunch of postmodernists. Because, I mean, if there's one thing that self-identified Marxists love, it's fucking postmodernism. Oh yeah, I mean, feminism, environmentalism, or critical race theory. Of course they had to throw critical race theory in there. Okay, so we're already getting an idea of what understanding Marxism means. Yeah, I know, how terrible. I mean, are they literally trying to say that multiculturalism is an unprecedented source of death?
But it's still Marxism. So, there must be good reasons why it has endured, even flourished in the face of unremitting failure. Say what you will about Marx the economist. He was a master psychologist.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, it is. It's PragerU. He was a master psychologist.
He recognized that there are many people in every society who are motivated by envy and resentment. Marx speaks directly to them. He tells them that their responsibility for the misery in their lives belongs to the capitalist system.
Well, I mean, it does. Now, you're gonna tell me that multiculturalism, feminism, environmentalism, postmodernism, and critical race theory all agree on that? Is that where we're going with this? That they all say this? Because I'm not sure who would disagree with that more strenuously. The multiculturalist, feminist, fucking postmodernists, critical race theorists, or Marxists.
If we can just get rid of that, he promises, we can eliminate poverty, inequality, exploitation, class conflict, war, and alienation. Not a bad list if you're looking to start a revolution.
And like, okay.
But there's more.
Ooh, there's more.
Marxism assures us that this socialist utopia is close at hand.
Yes, because, I mean, if there's one term that Marx absolutely just loved, one concept that he just uncritically stand, it's utopianism.
Available to all, not in some distant future or in the next life, but here and now. All we have to do is overcome one little obstacle: human nature.
Oh, human nature. See, I mean, this is so innovative. Nobody has ever suggested to me that that communism and human nature might conflict. Because you see, I mean, communism requires our respiratory and digestive systems to reverse. Yeah, we have to shit out our mouths and inhale carbon dioxide.
Marx expressed his deepest views on this subject in his Economic and Philosophical
Wow, he's got a copy of them. That looks like a first edition, too.
Manuscripts of 1844. They can be summed up in one phrase.
So we're not going to have a quote.
The enemy of being is having. In other words, the desire to own things makes you a bad person.
Okay, I will admit that that is not a work of Marx that I've read. Anyone in chat say mask, I mean, that the being and having thing sounds about right. Have you read the Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts? That is not one of his that I think I've actually read. I'm certain that what they just said is bullshit. But I would be interested. Let me see. Ökonomische und philosophische Manuskripte. Okay. Okay, they are the result of his study of Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and other classical political economists, and his first encounter with the workers' movement in Paris during 1843-1844. Okay, so the wage form, profit and capital, alienated labor, the relation of private property. Okay. I mean, actually, being and having, that's, I mean, now that you mention, I feel like that's actually a French philosopher. Oh fuck, that is not a very useful search term, because one of the most common German grammar questions native speakers and learners alike have is whether you form the perfect of a verb with sein, to be, or haben, which is to have. And so you look up sein und haben, and all you get is fucking grammar shit. Ah, well, nice to see you. I will be back on at 11:30 p.m. tomorrow night, Eastern Time. The enemy of being is having. Every link, it goes to PragerU, doesn't it? Enemy of being is having. Oh, wait. This is interesting. Okay. The Objective Standard already was using that phrase in 2012 in relation to the Marxist-inspired Occupied movement. Yeah, but mostly, I mean, page 1, it's mostly PragerU. Have we got anything? Irving Kristol. Ah, okay, now we get closer to where they would have come up with this. Okay. Yes.
However, you're not to blame. The blame belongs to capitalism. The most common interpretation of Marx's philosophy suggests that he opposed capitalism because it creates an unjust world of inequality, exploitation, and class conflict.
That's not first of all, okay. That would probably be the most common interpretation, because he literally said that. He spent thousands and thousands of pages outlining why he thought that and what he thought could be done about that. So I'm guessing that's why that's such a popular interpretation. To the extent that it is capable of making sense when it's coming from these people.
Marxism, according to this view, is all about equalizing income and social status.
No, it's about abolishing wage labor capital in the state. Yeah. I mean, okay, so we've veered off into... They forgot to mention social democracy, which is what they seem to have decided to go.
But it doesn't go far enough. Marx saw the accumulation of material wealth as dehumanizing. The more money and material possessions one acquires, the more estranged one is from his true humanity.
Well, I mean, and what's interesting is we have interesting studies on empathy and wealth, and it turns out according to these studies, the more money you have, the less you give a fuck about other people.
And what was that? In the philosopher's socialist paradise, one gets to eat, drink, and go to the theater free of charge and without having to earn a living.
Well, I like how we just said without having... Yes, the point is that the idea that living, the thing that we, biologically... The alternative to dying is a thing that we actually have to earn every day rather than it simply being a given, is kind of fucked up, don't you think? Yeah, I mean, this is actually somewhat better than I would have expected. Yeah, this actually is, tolerably... Somebody who went with this would not be entirely wrong in their understanding of, what Marx was all about. Certainly.
You get to do it without the guilt of being a moocher. All you have to do is enjoy yourself. Or, as Marx put it, you can do one thing today and another tomorrow. Hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, and rear cattle in the evening. Yes, rear cattle in the evening. That's how in touch Marx was with reality. But
Yeah, because cattle are morning people.
Who cleans out the sewers, does the dirty jobs that keep a society functioning?
Well, that's a very good question, and something that I seem to remember Marx actually having a... Yeah, exactly. It is an obvious rhetorical flourish. And see, my impression was that Marx had actually quite a few things to say on the subject of undesirable work.
Ironically, in the evil capitalist society, the sewer cleaner freely chooses to take on his job.
Yes, I mean, every single person that you find down amidst the fucking fatbergs and the raw sewage, I mean, that's somebody who dreamed of doing that all their lives. It's all they ever wanted. If there were no money, if they didn't have to work for a living, they would be down there amidst the floating turds of an entire city freely.
In the socialist paradise, coercion is almost always required.
Okay, so in a socialist paradise, there's a boss with a clipboard looking over your shoulder. Unlike capitalism, where we don't have any bosses.
Marx.
Also, why is he like swabbing the floor of the sewer? Like, what, is there going to be a reception in the sewer? Why do you need to swab the floor of the sewer?
Never bothered with such messy details. He left that to others. Unfortunately, those others always turn out to be megalomaniacs, like Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Castro, Pol Pot, and Hugo Chavez.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so the idea is that in socialism, where you don't have to earn a living, people are coerced into working, whereas in capitalism, where you literally have to earn being alive by working in order not to fucking die, that's not coercion, apparently. This is cute. Okay, so wait a second. You're going to say megalomaniacs, and you'll have... Okay, Lenin, Stalin... Okay, but we're not... Kim Il-sung isn't in there? The biggest fucking personality cult out there? Although, I mean, the Platinum Jubilee was 4 days long, and Kim Il-sung's birthday only gets a one-day bank holiday, so I guess there is some competition in that regard.
They were the ones who brought Marx to life and in the process caused tens of millions to suffer and die.
I thought Marx's mom brought him to life, actually. I mean, I thought it was like his parents fucked and that brought him to life, eventually.
Contrary to Marx's claims, work freely chosen brings both money and dignity.
Wait, okay, so that's contrary to Marx's claims? Because my entire understanding is that the whole reason I mean, admittedly, I haven't read the crucial economic and philosophical manuscripts, which tell us that apparently that PragerU is right about everything. Though it didn't look like it from my glimpse at the table of contents. But I kind of had this idea that Marx's whole point was that the only way you could have work freely chosen is if it wasn't in capitalism, and that, I mean, that the money was actually the reason work wasn't being, that you couldn't just freely choose work, and it wasn't dignified.
Furthermore, most people work best when they pursue their own self-interest, an idea Marx despised.
No, not exactly. Because his whole point was that workers' self-interest is directly at odds with boss' self-interest, because it's simple math. There's a revenue stream, and out of the 100% of the revenue that comes in, some of it's got to go to the boss, just for owning the shit, and the rest of it has to go to the workers so that they don't drop dead and can keep on doing the work. See, in capitalism, I love this is supposed to be like the capitalist utopia that they're showing us, and there has to be a cop right there to keep these 4 people in line. But Yeah, exactly. The whole idea is that workers need to pursue their self-interest, which is to abolish the fucking capitalist system and their status as the working class. He was kind of adamant about it, and he was a little bit explicit.
To him, self-interest turns everyone into Ebenezer Scrooge, greedy.
So Marx is Dickens now.
Grasping and unfeeling. Not only is money, that is capital, inherently corrupting, but the acquisition of it can't be done honestly or fairly.
Okay, if we're gonna just equate money to capital, we've always that. See, it feels almost churlish pointing out that capital and money are not the same thing in Marx's usage when it's a PragerU video, because I mean,
the rich got rich by exploiting the worker. For Marx, there's no other possible explanation.
Yes, because there's math. In fact, you go to business school and you find out that, you know, their entire equation for profit is based on the idea that there is there are diametrically opposed interests between the workers and the capitalists, because you have to subtract labor costs in order to get your profit or loss.
For many today, there is no other possible explanation.
Yeah, because it's true. I mean, it literally, there's no way that it works without exploitation.
These people, Marx offers a philosophical justification for their anger, even their rage.
I didn't need a philosophical justification for my anger or for my rage. I mean, just looking around is enough to provide a philosophical justification for both of those things, because things kind of fucking suck. Marx thought that self-interest under capitalism was necessarily antagonistic because the system pitted everyone against each other, but under socialism, self-interest would no longer be necessarily antagonistic. Yeah, that was sort of what I was trying to say, but not quite getting to. Yeah. Yeah, which is where he says the line, is this in the manifesto or someplace else, where he says that rather than one person's freedom being limited by another person's freedom, we go to a situation where one person's freedom is the necessary precondition for another person's freedom. I forget where he said that, but I mean, yeah, this is, I mean, surprisingly, this august educational institution, Prager University, is just remarkably full of shit.
From generation to generation, the formula never varies. Only by bringing the privileged down can the underprivileged be brought up. The venom that pours out of Marx's pen stems ultimately from the fact that reality wouldn't conform to his worldview.
Yes, I mean, that's, first of all, venom is such an interesting word, because if anything, mostly I find that Marx is not the most, I mean, his writing I would not call venomous, I would call extremely pedantic, actually, a lot of the time. Yes. Yeah, the free development of each is the condition of the free development of all. Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, what I love is they keep on saying all these things about, like, how venomous his writings are. Yeah, okay, I thought it was in the manifesto. Because that's, like, the first thing of his I ever read, probably most people who've read him ever read, and that quote's certainly been with me for a very long time. You know, his writing is so venomous that they won't quote a single bit of it. Well, yes, I mean, that's what the bourgeoisie are there for. They are there for us to be pissed off at them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be such fucking nongs.
It never seems to have occurred to him that people are complex beings with different talents, ambitions, and desires.
Okay, the guy in the middle looks like Gabriel Boric. Yeah, I mean, that's Marx. He just thought everybody was just one size fits all. Like,
It may be more accurate to say he didn't care. If people wouldn't conform to his worldview voluntarily, then the state would just have to use other methods of persuasion, like murder and terror.
citation, please.
It all made sense to the philosopher as he toiled away in a corner of the British Museum or in his squalid London apartment.
Well, you see, you know that he really has nothing worthwhile to say because he didn't keep his apartment neat and he was just constantly reading and researching stuff. Yeah, no shit. It's one of the fundamental premises. I mean, the whole point is that rather than doing the things you might actually be inclined to do, naturally inclined to do, or whatever, you are forced to do whatever work is going just so you fucking survive. Yeah, I know. I mean, capitalism, I mean, one of the things that's really remarkable about capitalism, I really, as an anti-capitalist, this does give me pause. It's such a terror-free, peaceful, non-coercive system we live in. I mean, no cops, no wars. Nobody's telling you what to do under capitalism. As long as you make money for somebody.
What is astonishing is that millions came to believe him. What is tragic is that millions more suffered and died because they did. What is scary is...
Oh, okay, that's an interesting way that he just put it. Because if they suffered and died because they believed in Marxism, that's kind of that's like he's kind of telling on himself there, because yeah, that's true. Millions of people were in fact murdered because they thought Marx had the right idea. I mean, people are still being murdered for that in some places. You're free to speak your mind, my friend, as long as you agree with me. But don't criticize the fatherland or those who shape your destiny, because if you do, we'll send out all our boys in blue and find a way to silence you. Okay, that's not Marx. But who is it?
Is that millions continue to believe. I'm Brad Thompson, professor of political science at Clemson University for Prager University. In a remarkably short period of time, the philosophy of Karl Marx changed the course of history. At the height of its power, half the world fell under its dominion, kept there by a combination of fear, terror, and brute force.
Okay. Yeah, what's interesting is, of course, that there was no fear, terror, or brute force in the U.S.-dominated areas. I mean, when Vietnam said they wanted to have an election and become a unified, independent country again, the U.S. said, "Yeah, go ahead." I mean, there wasn't like a Vietnam War or anything like that.
Then suddenly, in the late 1980s, it imploded. By all rights, this should have been the end of Marxism.
But the thing is that the states that imploded actually had to rewrite Marxism in such an extensive way in order to even appear to be consistent with the ideas, that it is entirely possible to actually be a full-on Marxist and be totally unimpressed with all of those places.
But it hasn't turned out that way. From environmentalism with its rejection of free markets to critical race theory, which sees white patriarchy as the source of all evil.
Yeah, see, I see these visual aids are really good, because I would never have believed that critical race theory is the idea that white patriarchy is the source of all evil. But I mean, they got the receipts there. Look at that blackboard. She's written that. I mean, they clearly that's what the whole thing is all about.
You'll find Marxism at its root. The leaders of Black Lives Matter, for example, openly acknowledge their devotion to Marxist ideology.
Which leaders of Black Lives Matter?
How do we explain this fascination for something that has so utterly failed everywhere it's been put into practice? We can find answers in one of Marx's most enduring
Oh, I thought... I'm sorry, I zoned out. When he said that, I thought he was talking about Elon Musk.
epigrams. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs.
Which is actually a Bible quote that he was riffing on.
Marx was a poor economist, but a talented journalist. The only actual job he ever had. He knew how to turn a phrase.
Okay, so researching and writing and coming up with a massive body of work analyzing the capitalist system, that isn't an actual job because it wasn't making money for anybody, apparently.
But what does this slogan even mean? According to what ability? According to what need? And
according to their ability, according to their need.
who determines anyone's ability or anyone's need?
Them.
Marx never bothered to answer these obvious questions.
God. I mean, it's like the level of dishonesty in this. Because, yes, I mean, you're saying that he wrote all these, like, thousands of pages of just, you know, his, like, published works, not to mention all the letters to the editor, all of the responses and things. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, what, to each according to the needs of some undisclosed third party? Yeah, I mean, and if you didn't somehow understand the phrase, I mean, the context in which it was written would kind of clue you in at what we were talking about.
He had much bigger things on his mind. Nothing less than the creation of an entirely new kind of world for an entirely new kind of human being.
Wait, okay, and you're saying that the principle from each according to their ability to each according to their need is unrelated to the new kind of world that he was trying to sketch? I mean, because last I checked, that was kind of supposed to be one of the guiding principles of that entirely new world, so it's not exactly a distraction from it.
Marx believed that by altering man's economic and political institutions, he could alter, or even better, rewire the human brain. He could...
God, what, just mad scientist Marx? I mean, I missed that part of Capital where he talks about the brain rewiring. Or maybe that was in the foreword. No, that was in the foreword to the second or third edition of the manifesto, you know, where they're talking about, you know, we would have written this a little bit differently if we'd already seen what went down with the Paris Commune, and that's where we came to the conclusion that obviously you need to be doing some hardcore neurosurgery in order to make the whole thing work, and they had a whole discussion of the neurosurgery in the foreword.
Could conjure a new consciousness that would replace the old false one. This new man would be less selfish and acquisitive and more altruistic and communal. In short, he would be a superior type of man. Of course, this new man could only reach this goal if he wasn't preoccupied with having to earn money.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think a lot of us can point to examples from our own lives of that. I mean, just look at this stuff. I mean, you just look at the work that I do and the work that I would be doing if I did not actually have to pay bills or anything. Like, I do shit that just bores the crap out of me and I think has the social utility of a fart. But I have to do it because that's what actually pays. If I was not worried about money, I'd be translating stuff that would be much more interesting to me and much more socially useful, but for which there's no money. Which is to say, most of the things that are more interesting and socially useful, there isn't any fucking money for them. I mean, it takes about 5 minutes for anyone who isn't completely sort of brainwashed by the capitalist system to realize how many more useful things to themselves and others they would be doing if they didn't have to go to some bullshit job.
According to Marx, money and the pursuit of it ruined everything. Marx hated.
That is actually, I take the piss out of their visuals, but that is actually kind of that's a remarkably accurate visual representation there. Let me just pull that up again.
Short, he would be a school if he wasn't of it ruined.
See, because the guy's chasing after this money, this banknote there, that is being artificially held just out of his reach, when in fact, it is literally already attached to his fucking body. That is actually a much better metaphor for capitalism, and particularly for what Marx would have to say about overcoming it, than I think they actually realized, or they probably wouldn't have used it.
And everything. Marx hated money. Maybe because he never found a way to make it.
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, when you live in a society where whether you live or die depends on money, and you find that you can't get any, yeah, you might actually find that money kind of sucks shit.
Getting rid of it was central to his worldview. Once a person's subsistence, one's daily bread, was distributed on the basis of need rather than greed, man's natural communal affections, long suppressed by his capitalist overlords, would be renewed.
I mean, that is a massive oversimplification, but I wouldn't say that's wrong. Yeah, I mean, that's about right.
This is Marx channeling the 18th century French social thinker Jean-Jacques Rousseau, one of the few people Marx admired. According to Rousseau, this is what you...
Okay, did Marx... Let's just see. Okay. Well, he not in a particularly visible way, apparently. See, it had occurred to me that I don't think I'd ever remembered reading Marx saying anything about Rousseau, so I just decided to check the wiki, and they also say he rarely mentions him. So I'm not sure where this guy gets the idea that he admired him strictly, but there you go.
What you must do if you want to create a new society. He who dares to undertake the making of a people's institutions must feel himself capable of changing human nature, of transforming each individual who by himself is a complete and solitary whole into part of a larger whole from which the individual receives his life and his being. Understand this, and you understand not only a key feature of Marxist thought, but the dark history of the 20th century.
Okay, where is he going to go here? I mean, I have a pretty good idea, but let's see him take this train into the station.
Marx took Rousseau literally. Human nature had to be returned to its allegedly pure, selfless state before capitalism, with its...
He did not say a selfless state.
Enlightenment and Judeo-Christian values.
Oh, Andrew, yeah, fuck this bullshit about Judeo-Christian values. Nobody was talking about Judeo-Christian values at Marx's day, because Judeo-Christian is a term that was made up by white supremacists in order to sort of co-opt Jews into bigotry against Muslims. You know fucking shit, he was part of the Radical Enlightenment.
Corrupted him. But creating this new man would be a formidable task. Marx anticipated that many would object, especially the owners and managers that had a large stake in the capitalist system.
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of see how they would object to a system where they aren't owners and managers of shit and are not actually any more powerful than anyone else. Yeah. And I have to wonder if maybe what we're seeing here in this academic theoretical work that we're all watching right now, written by oil billionaires, might be an example of capitalists and managers objecting. Yeah, I know. I consent. I consent. Henry Ford, do not consent. That would have been so much better if I'd already had a fucking name of some, like, traditional robber baron queued up, but I didn't, so...
Friendly persuasion wasn't going to get the job done. Only the ruthless application of state power would be up to the task. Marx was all for it.
Well, not what he says. First of all, what we're talking about at this point is, like, the section of the manifesto that he and Engels actually kind of went back and said they wouldn't necessarily have written it the same way after the Paris Commune, which they considered to be the first example of the dictatorship of the proletariat. But even in that original version, what they're talking about is, I mean, they explicitly say, when they say the state, they mean the working class as ruling class. So not strictly the state, like as in the existing institutions, which they specifically say that's going to be probably something of a non-starter. I don't remember if that was in the forward post-commune or whether that was in the original. But, yeah.
Private property, wage labor, competition in profits, these would have to go.
Yeah, I mean...
The state,
they would.
Now run by the workers themselves, the dictatorship of the proletariat, as Marx called it, would control production and pricing. It would wisely manage the economy.
Okay, the hilarious thing about this is that this is literally Caleb Maupin's view. I mean, I've seen him literally say this uncritically without pointing out that Marx and Engels didn't actually stand by this passage that they're talking about. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, and, there's a Caleb Maupin video, the one where he, it destroys BreadTube by pointing out overproduction in capitalism after calling them Malthusian for acknowledging overproduction in capitalism. He goes through this section exactly that they're using without pointing out that it was, that they distanced themselves from it in subsequent, post-commune editions. This is literally the Maupin treatment of the manifesto we're looking at right now.
From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs.
Yes, and when you know that context, I mean, it was kind of obvious to begin with, but you see why it was a ridiculous question to be acting like the possessive pronoun there, the his, was somehow undefined.
And imagine how wonderful it would be. No more ego, no more self-interest. Instead, everybody working for the benefit of everybody else. Peace, love, and harmony.
Yeah, sounds pretty good. I think there was also a foreword to the manifesto where they also say, where they distance themselves from this idea of using the ready-made state apparatus because of the experience of the commune. Which bit is part of from Critique of the Gotha program? This whole thing that they just said? Because I'm pretty sure that's also in this foreword.
For many, it's a very seductive idea. Who wouldn't aspire to live in such a world? Look around, a Marxist might say. The powerful exploit the weak, crushing the majority's noble aspirations. Your aspirations.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. That's literally fucking true. I mean, I guess you can't literally crush an aspiration because it doesn't have a physical form. But other than that, yeah. Oh, okay.
Just so they can have more. It's unfair and unjust. How much better if we just start over, start clean? That's the Marxist.
Yeah, you sold me. I mean, you're right. I mean, this existing system sucks shit. I mean, you've convinced me Marxism's fucking pog as hell.
Socialist dream. In real life, it's a nightmare. Needs become demands, and demands become rights. The best are mocked, and the
Oh, wait, but what you've got there, okay, the cop is mocking the best. Okay.
worst exalted. Innovation
Hey, wait, okay, you're telling us this in a society where we pretend that Elon Musk is clever and has worthwhile things to say. You're telling us this in a society where there's a thing called PragerU, and it is actually taken seriously by a frightening number of people. I think we're already in a world where the best are mocked.
withers, while the government grows ever larger. Eventually, the productive become virtual slaves to the unproductive, and the society collapses.
Wait, okay. I mean, you're just describing capitalism. This is literally, I mean, what you're literally describing here is proletarianization in capitalism.
Economically, intellectually, and morally. And then the real horror starts.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is like, he's just literally describing capitalism.
If you think I'm exaggerating, just ask someone who fled the Soviet Union or Cuba or Venezuela. For all its risk.
How about asking somebody who's still there, too, though? Because, I mean, it's interesting. I've been kind of following Cuba's COVID figures, their COVID response, and they have been counting their new cases in the double digits for quite some time now. Practically nobody's dying. I mean, despite being economically strangled by the U.S., they managed to have a healthcare system whose outcomes are roughly on the same level as the U.S.'s, at being the country with basically unlimited access to resources.
And inequities. They prefer freedom. And we should too. I'm Brad Thompson.
Okay, so wait, I thought you were saying that you were supposed to be defending the status quo, but now you're saying they prefer freedom and we should too? Yeah, I mean, so communism then.
Professor of Political Science at Clemson University for Prager University.
What the hell is Clemson University? Okay, upstate South Carolina. Never heard of it. I was reading through the Economic-Philosophische Manuscripts because I just happened to have them. I just never gotten around to actually reading them yet, because I have a huge, like, rotation of books that I sort of just shuffle through as I lose interest in one. But, okay, so there we go. We don't need that. There was this whole bizarre thing where your man went off talking about having is the enemy of being, and I was kind of curious, and I decided to just look through it because I was kind of bored with everything else I was reading at the moment anyway, and I found a very interesting quote. So, okay. Well, have a good night. Thanks for stopping by. I will be back I'm always every Friday and Saturday, and sometimes I pop up just unexpectedly in the early evening. So, and also, I also show up on Hyperpolyglotting, which is my language and GeoGuessr channel, and I also stream in the early evenings there, so love to see you there as well. Thank you for popping by. Okay, so here's the quote, and this is my spontaneous translation. First of all, increasing the wage results in overwork amongst the workers. The more they wish to earn, the more of their time they have to sacrifice, and completely alienating themselves of all freedom, carry out slave labor in the service of greed. In so doing, they shorten their lives. This shortening of their lives is a favorable circumstance for the working class as a whole, because it means that that ever new supply of workers, I'm just adding that, to clarify becomes needed. This class must always sacrifice part of itself in order to avoid complete destruction. Die Erhöhung des Arbeitslohns führt Überarbeitung unter den Arbeitern herbei. Je mehr sie verdienen wollen, je mehr müssen sie ihre Zeit aufopfern und vollständig aller Freiheit sich entäußernd im Dienst der Habsucht Sklavenarbeit vollziehen. Dabei kürzen sie dadurch ihre Lebenszeit ab. Diese Verkürzung ihrer Lebensdauer ist ein günstiger Umstand für die Arbeiterklasse im Ganzen, weil dadurch immer neue Zufuhr nötig wird. Diese Klasse muss immer einen Teil ihrer selbst opfern, um nicht ganz zugrunde zu gehen. In the original. I mean, the point being that if you try to make more money when your only way of making money, and actually just in general, the first section, which is all I've actually read at this point of the Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts, is quite worthwhile because it points out the various ways in which capitalists are in a state of advantage over workers, which has mostly to do with the fact that they have flexibility in how they get money, whereas workers are just constantly having to chase after it. And, of course, the more workers are chasing after money, the less time they've got for anything else, and they use up their lives and energy. So that is what actually was being discussed, that this political scientist from South Carolina was professionally misunderstanding. So, okay, we've got one more of these from this series on Misunderstanding Marxism.
University. Engraved on Karl Marx's tombstone in Highgate Cemetery in North London are the following words. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay, that's like the first actual Marx quote apart from that I think this is actually provided, apart from to each according to their need, etc. Yeah.
Substitute the word professor for the word philosopher. We really don't have philosophers anymore. And
okay. I would love this guy apparently works at an actual university. I looked it up, and it is like a legit university. I would love him to go to the philosophy department of his university and run that by them.
You get right to the core of Marx's enduring attraction to the contemporary world. Marx demands that the intellectual class, the professors of law, sociology, history, women's studies, and...
No, he fucking doesn't. That is literally not what he...
Anthropology, journalism, and so on, come out of the ivory tower and join the barricades.
What, so everybody except the professors of philosophy who, like, actually exist?
To see themselves not as the preservers of the dusty past, but the creators of a new and glorious future.
Which sounds pretty good, actually. Okay, are you going to get to the point where you explain wow, that's bad? Because so far, it's actually, I'm having trouble seeing how anyone could...
The lure has proven to be very strong, and it's not hard to understand why.
Oh, it's worth remembering for anyone who wasn't here for the first one last night, that this fool has declared that Marxism is basically everything he doesn't like. He says that it's multiculturalism, it's critical race theory, it's feminism, it's environmentalism, and of course it's postmodernism, because if there's one thing Marxists love, it's postmodernism. Yeah, no shit, of course he thought no such thing. His whole point was that the working class was the one that had to do it. Oh, I mean, public institutions of higher learning definitely existed. I mean, he went to one.
How much more meaningful, exciting, and romantic to see yourself as an agent of change.
Dressed like Indiana Jones, apparently.
Rather than a...
Oh, well, of course, because he's a professor of anthropology.
mere academic. How much more meaningful, exciting, and romantic to see the young people who fill up your classroom as potential soldiers in the cause. Send them into the world with the same revolutionary spirit, the same disgust toward bourgeois middle-class values that you feel. And you...
Okay. I mean, I love this idea that the only way you could possibly be disgusted with the way the society is run is if somebody brainwashed you. I mean, and it's particularly rich coming from a propaganda operation set up because billionaires decided that the only way that they can possibly get people not to be disgusted with the way things are run is to brainwash them.
You've done your job. And we must give these lecture hall revolutionaries their due. Look around. For the most part, they've succeeded.
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of hilarious to look at the same time as that horrible Sam Adler-Bell thing about where he decides to sort of say, you gotta hand it to white nationalists, and that actually wokeness is the problem, and all this shit. And he claimed that actually the revolutionary left has taken over the universities and stuff, and it's like I mean, I know some, I know revolutionary leftists at universities, and yeah, I don't think they would agree with that take.
Drill into any current leftist movement, environmentalism, critical race theory,
There is no critical race theory movement. Oh, the welfare state, but the welfare state is a leftist movement. First of all, I mean, I can't believe that they're all still banging about the welfare state in the U.S. in this year of 2022, when we haven't had anything that you could reasonably, without squinting heavily, call a welfare state since before Bill Clinton took over. I mean, they're sitting here, they're crapping on about the welfare state as if it fucking existed. Maybe it's the lighting. There we go. Yeah. Okay. And can I just say, every time I see CRT, I think cathode ray tubes. Yes, the welfare state movement.
massive expansion of the welfare state.
What expansion? It's like, yeah, it isn't really expansion if you say maybe we should have one.
Not to mention diversity, equity, and inclusion offices at every university and major corporation. And you will find...
Yeah, I know, because that's what we're taken to the streets for, isn't it? I mean, everybody was just out in the streets for diversity, equity, inclusion offices at corporations. That's what that was all about. I thought it was about abolishing the cops, or at the very least taking their money away so that they could do less fucking damage. But apparently, no, it is about having diversity, equity, and inclusion offices. I had one teacher who, in high school actually, in year 10, who I think probably was one, but he was very careful not to be explicit about it, but he's the reason I saw meet one.
Find Marxism at its core.
Yes, I mean, because, of course, in Volume 3 of Capital, see, nobody's read it except for the people at PragerU. Nobody's ever read it, and that's how nobody realizes that Volume 3 is just all about how the working class need to get together and put in diversity, equity, and inclusion offices in the corporations.
A contempt of the Enlightenment and the Judeo-Christian value system from which capitalism springs.
No. First of all, as Mask pointed out just yesterday, Marx was part of the Enlightenment, the radical Enlightenment. And second of all, the Judeo-Christian value system, that term didn't even fucking exist at the time. And it's a bullshit term in the first place, Because actually what they're just saying is Christianity. There's nothing Judeo in it.
Marx's most famous call to action, "Workers of the world unite," was not, of course, to the professoriate, but to the laboring class.
You think? Like, he looks genuinely surprised by this, having just claimed that Marx was actually issuing a call of action to fucking academics. No, you can't blame us for that shit. That
didn't work out so well. Workers, especially in the United States, turned out to be more interested in refrigerators than revolutions.
Wait. Okay, first of all, that's not true. I mean, I'm not sure exactly when we had this refrigerators or revolution. Okay. God, see, some of this shit is so fucking shallow that it actually takes a while to figure out what angle to actually see where they're distorting from. But yeah, at a certain point, the unions got bought off during the special period that started after 1945, yes. But before that, there was actually a pretty big fucking revolutionary workers' movement in the U.S., I think you'll find.
The only barricade they were passionate about was a white picket fence in front of a green suburban lawn. Poor, benighted souls, the appeal of Marxism was somehow lost on them. Maybe because they didn't go to college.
Yeah, because that's where, at the beginning of the 20th century, that's where you found the Marxists. You had to go to the universities. It wasn't the fucking textile factories and the fucking auto sweatshops and the coal mines or anything like that. Or, like long haul trucking and all that shit. No, it was in the universities, of course.
But the intellectual class never lost faith. Even after Stalin, even after Mao, even after Castro wrecked Cuba.
Wrecked Cuba? See, there's all sorts of things you can say about the Cuban Revolution and the Cuban Communist Party, but the idea that Cuba is worse off now than the disastrous state it was before 1959, when it was just a literal fucking colony of the U.S., that was basically mostly run by the mafia, that's impressive. Oh yeah, of course there were. I mean, and in some of the unions, there was quite dominant. And of course, after the Wagner Act in the 30s, the whole idea was that the state realized that the best way to deal with the unions was to try to co-opt them by conditioning legal recognition on kicking all the radicals out of the union leadership.
Even after Pol Pot murdered millions of his fellow Cambodians, even after Hugo Chavez destroyed the strongest economy in South America.
That's kind of an interesting way of describing it, because actually he came into a country that had something like 80% poverty rate, and by the time he died, actually, that was way down. Extreme poverty was almost completely eradicated, as was illiteracy. Yeah.
The academic elite remained true believers.
The academic elite. I see, if they had actual names, they would use them, but the thing is, there's so few actual academics. Yeah, the global downturn in oil prices certainly helped, but what's really been destructive has been just the outright. Well, you had, first of all, there was a capital strike going on in Venezuela the whole time, with, of course, U.S. support, just as they did with Allende. And then, and even that didn't really didn't really cause a huge problem. There were ways to work around that. What's really caused a disaster, to the extent that even the U.S.-backed right-wing opposition are saying that this is a problem is the so-called sanctions, which are specifically targeted at destroying the funding stream for the anti-poverty programs. And even the people who think Guaido was legitimately elected when Mike Pence voted for him are actually saying that these so-called sanctions are actually killing people. Of course, their view is that they need to fine-tune the sanctions to kill fewer people.
Indeed, in a world without faith, where God is dead, Marxism has become, in effect, a substitute religion. One of the major...
What world without... we're talking about the U.S., one of the most fucking over-the-top Christian countries on the planet.
Strengths of Marxism, in contrast to both modern liberalism and conservatism.
Oh, wait a second. Okay, that's actually surprising, since he's just spent an entire series here conflating Marxism and liberalism. And now he's acknowledging they're actually not the same thing?
Is the unyielding commitment of its followers to this faith, to bear witness to it, and to act on it. It summons these...
To what faith? Oh, that's interesting, that what, they're giving him a shofar? They're giving Marx a fucking shofar like it's Yom Kippur? That's interesting. That's not, like, dodgy at all, that they've decided to specifically give him a Jewish ritual musical instrument.
Followers to join a crusade to destroy the evil that is capitalism and to create the good that is communism. In our secular world, the Marxist ideal gives the Marxist true believer a reason to live, a reason to die, and a reason to kill.
In the days of COVID, I don't think we need any additional reasons to die. I mean, between COVID and cops and fucking climate change, I think that's already our dance card in terms of potential widespread causes of death are already covered.
Monsters like Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Kim Il-sung, Ho Chi Minh, and Pol Pot took this to the nth degree and murdered millions.
Okay. It will be very interesting if they try to break that down.
For the record, the latter two were politically educated in France.
And the latter one was backed by the U.S. the whole fucking time, because he also attacked Vietnam. And if we're going to talk about killing millions in Indochina, there's somebody else. There's this... I can't put my finger on it, but I feel like there's another country that we need to be bringing into this discussion. I mean, perhaps we need to be talking about JFK and LBJ and fucking Milhouse Nixon. Well, yeah, that's one of the things. And Kim Il-sung, one has to say, it's really variable. Actually, I mean, well, on his watch, when you read like literature from before he died, actually there was still a fair bit of like references to dialectical materialism and shit in yes, it is, but it doesn't. There was a time when it tried to have some Marxism mixed in with it. Like, there was a time when it explicitly claimed to be, a Marxist-Leninist ideology before Kim Il-sung died. Then he died, and actually, there's this great project called the Korea Computer Center, and what they do is they get handheld devices from the DPRK, just so they can analyze the shit that's on them. And one of the things that's on them is these preloaded PDFs of the entire school curriculum. And so they published that stuff, and I went through it, and I was very curious to see how many mentions Marx would get at all. He got exactly one. He gets a mention in the world history course in one year, I forget which one, where they mentioned he wrote the manifesto. And then they mention the breakup of the First International, and they get that wrong in a way I'd never actually heard before. They claimed that the anarchists opposed class struggle, that was the fault line, which I hadn't heard that particular line before. But Thought Slime did a whole video where he brings that up as an example of a myth about anarchism. So I guess that was going around outside of North Korea as well. Yeah, I mean, in fact, I mean, there was an interesting, just to show you how fucking un-Marxist the whole thing is now. Kim Jong-un gave a speech to like the propaganda workers, and it was like literal idealism. I mean, he explicitly said that the ideas are the driving force of everything, which you would not, I mean, when you look at stuff from the 80s, they totally would not have gone that route. They would have talked, I mean, at the time, they still talked about, like, material conditions. I mean, they also still talked about communism, which, I mean, that's a whole weird topic, because they spent, like, a decade, like the last decade of Kim Jong-il, taking the word communism out of everything, and now they're sort of occasionally bringing it back, but not together with anything else. I mean, you just like, yeah, you know, statements about, you know, profound faith in our communist future or something like that, but not any talk about what they mean by it.
Pol Pot studied at the Sorbonne. If you think I'm exaggerating the evils of Marxism,
or understating the evils of the French, apparently.
If you think Stalin and those other guys got communism wrong, but...
Well, they did. They demonstrably fucking did.
Your new democratic socialism will get it right.
Well, no, that won't get it right either, because that's just fucking social democracy. They just thought it sounded cooler to reverse the words. Yeah, but which is interesting, because they throughout the 80s they were still saying that it was kind of part of it, and Marx still has like one sad little public portrait in one street corner of Pyongyang. I forget exactly where. They just kind of kept it there, even though you basically never hear about the man anymore.
Think again. Marxism leads a society toward a fixed goal, a utopian vision of pure freedom in which the individual is liberated from the false consciousness of capitalism.
Okay, I'm failing to see the problem. That sounds pretty good so far.
Unfortunately, by Marx's own definition, the path to this utopia requires the destruction, economically, politically, and morally, of every vestige of civilization as we know it.
Yeah, gonna need a citation on that.
Economically, Marxism seeks to destroy free enterprise.
Good. It's about time we got rid of that bullshit. There's nothing free about it.
The division of labor, profit and loss.
Okay, why did they add profit and loss? Like, surely why not just say profit?
Competition and material wealth.
Wait, no, not that last one. A couple of those first ones, definitely. But material wealth, the whole idea is that we should all have some. And that a lot of it should just belong to us all.
Politically, it seeks to destroy the...
Why is he on the old Mario Brothers Donkey Kong framework, by the way?
The rule of law, separation of powers, and freedom of speech. Morally, it seeks to destroy individualism, religious liberty, and independent thought.
Independent thought being something that PragerU cares deeply about.
And on top of this rubble, it builds the all-powerful state ruled by an all-powerful elite.
You're just describing the U.S.
This is why the communist 1%, the true 1%, must use the full power of the state to force
the true 1%,
the 99%, the true 99%, to become something they are not and do not want to be.
Okay, he's gone so fucking abstracted from anything that, like, who the fuck are the true 1%? Who the fuck are the true 99%? Like, how are you dividing these things up? And why is your pie chart not actually reflect 99 and 1%?
And if that doesn't work, the secular philosophy of brotherly love simply intimidates into silence and ultimately liquidates as much of the 99% as is necessary to keep everybody in line.
Wait, that's the secular philosophy of brotherly love? I mean, he's getting very animated at this point. He's getting very excited about it, but honestly, he's making even less sense than he was at any other time in this series. And he wasn't exactly involved in sense overproduction beforehand.
Censorship, secret police, and...
Wait, I mean, see, you're telling on yourself when you immediately have a U.S. referent that is obviously a fucking Secret Service agent who has a shitty tailor. I mean, look, we can see the white socks, motherfucker. Do work on that. So he's just sort of admitting that actually, just visually, through the visual language, he's admitting that we've already got the secret police.
Re-education camps. These are not...
Wow, and he's wearing the... I mean, yeah, because we don't have incarceration.
Not bugs in an imperfect system. They are features, critical parts of its design.
These are all things that you're quite happy with when it's the U.S. doing them, though.
In short, the problem with Marxism has been and always will be Marxism.
Which part isn't true? I mean, there's so many things that statement applies to that I'm genuinely uncertain which bit you're calling bullshit on. If we called bullshit on every single thing that's bullshit, we would run up a huge phone bill.
Too bad the academic establishment has yet to figure this out.
You're part of the fucking academic establishment, motherfucker. You're a professor of political science at a public university. So which bit was it? Which untrue bit of the vast smorgasbord of untrue things were you referring to?
Or even worse, maybe they have. I'm Brad Thompson.
Wait, I missed something. Maybe they have what?
Marxism. Too bad the academic establishment has yet to figure this out. Or even worse, maybe they have. I'm Brad Thompson, professor of political science at Clemson University for Prager University.
How the fuck? See, everybody else just says PragerU. How the hell can somebody who works at an actual university, it is a legit university, actually, like, with a straight face, and he is admirably doing a good job there of maintaining a straight face, call this thing a university? Yeah, I mean, you could say that the secret police and incarceration are sort of a feature of states. That the minute you decide that you're going to try to be the first revolutionary movement to actually successfully get to communism by taking over state power rather than moving farther and farther over, well, I was thinking actually he looks sort of like an older George McFly. Then, I mean, if you have a state, you're probably gonna have secret police, and you're probably gonna have incarceration, because it's just kind of part of the general package. And if you try to build communism by taking over state power, chances are you're not going to do that because you're going to be too concerned with maintaining state power, and those two things are at direct odds with each other. I think if a state started out without secret police, they would soon have them.